New proposals on the implementation of the so-called two-pot retirement system. Treasury has proposed that the new system take effect on March the 1st, 2024, and it's not next year. The two-pot system will comprise of a savings pot, which will receive 1/3 of contributions and will be accessible in the form of a withdrawal of a minimum of 2,000 Rand per year. Now, there'll be another pot, the so-called retirement pot, and that will receive 2/3 of contributions and will only be accessible on retirement. And there's a lot of talk and discussion about when this will be implemented and the readiness of it. Matthew Spark is the Parliamentary Coordinator for Cosatu, who joins me now. Matthew, thanks very much indeed for your time. I mean, Cosatu, as far as the public workforce is concerned, I mean, you guys are saying, or were saying for months now, we need immediate access to the spot because people are cash-strapped and they need money. So you've had some concessions come up in Parliament where I believe they've said, well, you can have that much. But I see that the implementation of this two-pot system is now being pushed to 2024 in March. What can you tell us about this, Matthew?
So look, we've made good progress. We do accept that legislation does take some time to develop, on average 5 years, but we made significant progress quite quickly. We had first raised this call as Cosatu in 2020 during the height of the COVID lockdown, when workers were sent home without wages. Workers were waiting for months to get their UIF payments and so forth. And so I think we're quite pleased that Treasury has accepted our proposals. There's now a draft bill before Parliament that speaks to many of the issues we have raised. So it includes all workers, public workers and private sector workers, because our point is that all workers, be it in the public sector or in the private sector, are struggling. They're supporting relatives who've lost jobs, who have lost wages. All workers are drowning in debt. So this is quite a good two-pot framework, and that it provides for 1/3 of your pension funds to go into a savings pot, which you can access once a year as the need arises. The other 2/3 will go into a preservation pot. We think it's positive because it's going to help avoid the need for workers to resign from their jobs and thus become unemployed and lose their salaries, and to cash out the entire pension funds when they're struggling. It's going to enable workers once a year to tap into the savings pot. We think it's also going to help to incentivize workers to save more, knowing that once a year they could access the savings pot. We had raised some remaining concerns with Treasury and Parliament last week about some issues that need to be resolved. One, we had said that pension funds must be required to join this two-pot regime. They've agreed to that. That will happen. We had also said that there needs to be some immediate relief when the law comes into effect. They've agreed there is a need to do so. We need to finalize the technicalities about how that can be effected. But we think it's quite simple just to allow workers to convert the existing savings into the new two-pot regime. We also said that workers must still be able to access their full pensions minus taxes when they are retrenched or dismissed or resign. I think they've agreed to part of it around retrenchment, and we think also dismissal. We need to find some compromises around the issue of resignation, because often workers resign to take care of a sick relative or to move province when the spouse gets a job in another province. But in principle, they've agreed to our proposals. I think we had said that we're not happy with the proposal, which actually was made by industry, to shift it from March next year into March 2024. Industry has made this request because they need to have time to prepare. We think they're not being fair to workers who have been waiting since 2020. It would be very unfair to tell workers to wait until 2024 when they're really struggling to pay their debts to survive. We think there could be a better compromise. So there is a need to do some more work on the legislation. And sure, we could say let Parliament pass the bill by March 2023. And then perhaps a fair compromise could be to say let the bill come into effect by October next year. But we think to delay it further because industry is feeling grumpy and doesn't really feel much compassion or doesn't care about workers or the poor, to delay to 2024 will be unfair and unreasonable. And it might actually incentivize workers to resign and to cash out, which is what we're trying to avoid. So we've made good progress. There's a good...
Sorry to come in there. Let's talk about that. So as it stands and as the proposal stands, Matthew, you guys are saying that, look, let's try and bring this up a bit to October 23, where you can get access to this, but the proposal stands at March 2024. Earlier in your answer, you said that the access of immediate funds in the savings spot can be done as the proposal stands, not just with public workers, but with workers generally. Is that true? Is that how I understand it?
Yes, that's correct. So originally, government had actually said only private sector workers, and the argument was that public sector workers have received the wages, etc. we had said, look, we need to include all workers. We can't afford to divide workers, be it public or private.
Yeah.
We also said even though public workers do get paid, they did not receive an increase in 2020. They received a hybrid increase last year, but also they are supporting relatives in the private sector who have lost jobs, who have lost wages. And if you look at the debt reports from the National Credit Regulator, all workers, public and private, are drowning in debt. So we need to give relief to all workers. So we were quite pleased when government agreed to allow all public and private sector workers to have some relief. So that's quite positive. Treasury had originally proposed for implementation to be from March next year. They had, I think, encountered some resistance from the industry, from the pension funds administrators. But we think it's very unreasonable for pension fund administrators who have been enjoying a very comfortable life or making huge profits on workers' monies to want to kick down the can for an additional year. We have proposed as a fair compromise that, let's say, look at October next year, because in fact the original implementation date was actually meant to have been October 2021. So there has already been a 2-year delay in reality since that original agreement we had at Treasury in October 2020.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Matthews Park is a Parliamentary Coordinator for Cosatu. Thanks very much indeed for bringing us up to speed with that. So, Dan